The presidency of the United States is presented as the most transparent office in the world. Cameras, speeches, press conferences, and history books create the image of leaders constantly under public scrutiny. But behind that image lies a simple truth. Power does not eliminate secrets, it creates them. From the very beginning, U.S. presidents learned that revealing everything was impossible. Some truths were considered too dangerous, too damaging, or too destabilizing for the public. Others threatened political survival, national security, or personal legacy. Silence became a tool of governance. The White House was never just a seat of power, it was a shield. Within its walls, illnesses were hidden, mistakes were buried, and decisions with devastating consequences were justified as necessary. The public saw confidence and control. Behind closed doors, fear, weakness, and calculation often ruled. Secrecy was not always malicious. In times of war, presidents concealed operations, negotiations, and intelligence to protect lives. But over time, the line between protection and deception blurred. National security became a justification for manipulation. Political stability became an excuse for lies. Some secrets were personal: addictions, mental decline, affairs, and physical incapacity. Others were institutional: illegal surveillance, covert operations, and abuses of power. What united them was the same logic: the public cannot know. The darkest secrets of U.S. presidents were not accidents. They were choices. And each choice shaped history in ways the American people only discovered decades later, if they discovered them at all. This is where the story begins. Not with speeches and monuments, but with what was hidden, and why it was never meant to be seen. Lying was never supposed to be part of the presidency. Yet again and again, presidents discovered that controlling the truth was often easier and safer than telling it. When reality threatened power, reputation, or national stability, facts were reshaped, delayed, or buried. Some lies were told in public, directly to the American people. Others were hidden behind vague language, classified documents, or carefully crafted speeches. Presidents learned that what mattered was not always what was true, but what could be proven, and when. One of the most common tools was classification. By labeling information as a national security risk, administrations concealed military failures, covert operations, and illegal actions for decades. Wars were justified with incomplete or misleading intelligence. Casualty numbers were minimized. Objectives were redefined when reality failed to match promises. Cover-ups followed a familiar pattern. First, denial. Then, partial admission. Finally, when evidence became impossible to ignore, justification. Each stage was designed to buy time and protect authority. The truth often emerged years later through leaked documents, investigative journalism, or declassified archives, long after decisions could be reversed. Some presidents approved secret operations without public knowledge or congressional oversight. Others allowed intelligence agencies to act in legal gray zones, trusting that success would erase the need for explanation. When operations failed, silence became policy. What made these lies especially dangerous was not their scale, but their impact. Millions of citizens supported wars based on manipulated information. Trust in institutions eroded. Once the truth surfaced, it became clear that the damage was not only political, it was moral. These were not isolated incidents. They were part of a pattern. When power feels threatened, transparency becomes optional. And in the White House, the truth has often been the first casualty. Power demands strength, or at least the appearance of it. For much of American history, showing weakness was seen as incompatible with leadership. As a result, some of the most powerful men in the world governed the nation while hiding severe illnesses, addictions, and psychological struggles. Several U.S. presidents were seriously ill while in office, sometimes to the point of incapacity. Strokes, heart disease, chronic pain, and degenerative conditions were concealed from the public. Medical records were falsified. Doctors were pressured into silence. In some cases, critical decisions were made while presidents were heavily medicated, exhausted, or barely functional. Addiction was another carefully guarded secret. Alcoholism plagued more than one presidency, quietly affecting judgment and behavior. In other cases, dependence on painkillers, sedatives, or stimulants was hidden behind the language of medical treatment. The public saw energy and confidence. Behind closed doors, presidents relied on chemicals to function. Mental health was the most dangerous secret of all. Depression, paranoia, and emotional instability were never acknowledged publicly. Advisors and family members quietly took control, filtering information and shielding the president from scrutiny. In extreme cases, unelected individuals effectively ran the government while the president struggled in silence. These secrets were hidden not only to protect reputations, but to prevent panic. Admitting that a president was unfit could destabilize markets, embolden enemies, or trigger constitutional crisis. Silence was chosen as the lesser evil. But the cost was high. When illness and addiction shape decisions in secret, democracy is compromised. The nation believes it is being led by one mind, when in reality it is guided by illness, medication, or fear. The most unsettling truth is this: some of the most important moments in U.S. history were decided by leaders who were not fully in control of their own bodies or minds. And the public was never told. Power does not corrupt everyone, but it reveals those who are willing to abuse it. Throughout U.S. history, several presidents crossed ethical and legal lines, convinced that the authority of the office placed them above accountability. Corruption at the presidential level rarely looked like petty crime. It took the form of abuse of power, using government agencies to spy on political enemies, pressuring institutions for personal or political gain, and bending the law to protect allies. What made these actions especially dangerous was their legitimacy. When the president acts, the system often follows. Some administrations turned intelligence agencies inward, authorizing surveillance on journalists, activists, and political opponents. Others interfered directly in judicial processes, attempting to block investigations or manipulate outcomes. In these moments, the presidency became a weapon not of leadership, but of control. Scandals did not emerge by accident. They were uncovered through leaks, resignations, and relentless investigation. In several cases, presidents denied wrongdoing until evidence became undeniable. The strategy was always the same: delay, discredit, and dominate the narrative. What shocked the public most was not just the crimes, but the normalization of them. Actions once considered unthinkable were justified as political necessity. Loyalty replaced legality. Silence was rewarded. Truth became optional. These scandals left permanent scars. Trust in government collapsed. Citizens began to question whether the presidency served the nation or itself. And once that doubt took hold, it never fully disappeared. The darkest realization was this: the greatest threat to democratic institutions did not always come from foreign enemies, but from within the White House itself. Some presidential secrets are not hidden in documents or scandals, but in the consequences of decisions made in silence. Orders signed behind closed doors have sent millions into war, authorized covert operations, and caused deaths that were never publicly acknowledged. U.S. presidents have approved military actions knowing that civilians would die. Bombing campaigns were justified with strategic language, while the human cost remained classified or minimized. In some cases, presidents expanded wars in secret, escalating conflicts without public consent or full congressional oversight. Covert operations left darker shadows. Assassination attempts, regime changes, and support for violent actors abroad were authorized under the banner of national security. When these operations succeeded, they were denied. When they failed, they were erased. Entire chapters of history remained hidden for decades until declassified files revealed the truth. The moral burden of these decisions was rarely shared with the public. Presidents spoke of freedom, security, and necessity, while the reality on the ground told a different story. Civilian casualties became statistics. Moral responsibility dissolved into strategic language. Even domestically, violence left its mark. Some presidents ordered force against their own citizens, crushing protests, authorizing surveillance that led to imprisonment or death, and framing dissent as a threat to national stability. These were not moments of weakness. They were deliberate choices. Choices made by individuals who believed that the ends justified the means and that history would forgive them. But history does not forget. Behind every classified order lies a human cost. And behind every secret war lies a moral shadow that follows a presidency long after it ends. No secret stays buried forever. Files are declassified. Witnesses speak. Documents leak. And when they do, history begins its final judgment. For U.S. presidents, the truth often emerges long after they have left office, when apologies no longer matter and consequences are only symbolic. Some revelations rewrite reputations. Leaders once celebrated as heroes are reassessed with colder eyes. Decisions praised as necessary are exposed as reckless or immoral. The distance of time removes fear and loyalty, allowing facts to surface without restraint. Other secrets are never fully revealed. Key documents remain classified. Critical records disappear. Official narratives harden into history before the truth can catch up. In these cases, judgment remains incomplete based on fragments, testimony, and inference. What unites all these stories is the cost of secrecy. Trust in government erodes. Cynicism grows. Citizens learn that power often protects itself first. The presidency, once viewed as a symbol of moral authority, becomes something more fragile respected, but no longer blindly believed. Yet exposure also serves a purpose. It reinforces the principle that no office is above scrutiny and no leader beyond accountability. History may be slow, but it is relentless. The darkest secrets of U.S. presidents remind us of a fundamental truth. Democracy depends not on perfect leaders, but on the willingness to question them. The moment secrecy replaces accountability, power escapes control. And that is the real lesson written not in speeches or monuments, but in what was hidden, and what was eventually revealed.